Are we live? Yes. Oh, good. The spinning wheel. Woo-wee. How the heck ever is everybody? Oh my goodness. I think I flew in here like like mad. Sorry for the late start here. A little shift in the time to 6:30 this week. Had a final walkthrough with a client, and we had to push it out a little bit. And it's the way it goes in the world of real estate. Nothing goes exactly to plan sometimes. So we've got to learn to roll with the punches. But we are talking. I got a couple different topics I want to talk to you about tonight. So we're going to talk about the warning that surfaced about the housing recession as opposed to an economic recession. And I want to talk about that. I want to talk about what what is being said, what they think is the cause, and all the things. But we're going to dig into a couple other topics that came up in the meantime that are worth having a discussion about. Some weeks are a little bit of snooze fest in real estate land, and this was not one of them. So I appreciate you guys. If you didn't get the memo in the post, I tried to post it to try to let people know so they weren't sitting there waiting for me, wondering where the heck I was at 6 p.m. Hopefully you guys are not waiting. But let's see who we got in the house today. We got Cindy Atwood in the house. Everything okay? Yes, ma'am. 100%. Just doing some real estate biz. That's it. Meeting some folks. And by the way, I'm going to take this opportunity for my first win of the day. Get rid of this music. My first win of the day. I am going to actually congratulate my clients, Dave and Barb, closing on your house tomorrow. Appreciate you guys so much. They are loyal YouTube viewers, part of the Savvy Home Seller community. Super, super, super happy for you guys. I know it was a siege packing up that house and getting ready, and I knew you could do it, and you're doing it. Tomorrow's the big day. Hallelujah. So I want to give them a shout out. But we've got who else we got going on in here? We got Wiggly Arm Guys in the house. Miss H, hello, hello, hello. Yeah, we got a lot to talk about. I appreciate you being here for sure. Market is guys, I interviewed, a handful of new referral partners this week all over the country, and the market is definitely starting to shift in areas that have been kind of status quo for a while. So I'm going to get into, actually, before I get into any more comments, let's talk about what it is that we're talking about tonight. So first off, do me a favor and post your wins. As always, I want to hear about what's going on that's good in your world as we speak. What happened the past 7 days that we can celebrate and support each other with. Because you know what? That's what we need to do. We need to get some good mojo going here. Please, we need to get some good mojo. I said to my friend, this morning, you know what? Every time I wake up this morning, every morning I wake up, I grab my phone and I look at the headlines and I go, I don't know why I do it, but I do. And I go, wait a minute, am I dreaming or am I awake? Because it's never a dull moment. QQQ, drop QQQ in front of your question so I can pick that out in the chat. Makes it a little easier. I don't want to miss any of your questions. And we've got a poll. I want to know, I'm going to touch on the 50-year mortgage tonight. Because it's all over the news, and I got some opinions on that. So the poll, which kind of ties this in together, will the proposed 50-year mortgage keep the housing market from going into a housing recession? Let me know what you think, because everybody's gonna have. I'm interested to hear what you guys think about that. Everybody's got an opinion. Everybody's entitled to an opinion. Headlines. We're gonna talk about this housing recession warning. Maybe we're already in it. We'll see. We're going to talk about that. Why this person beset part of the Treasury Secretary says that is posted a warning about the housing recession. Warning of the housing recession. I'm going to talk about the 50-year mortgage and all that entails, and some thoughts. And I'm very curious to hear what your thoughts are on that. And then good old Zillow. This will be number 7 this year. There is a new lawsuit, and you know what? The purpose is not to throw them under the bus, but the purpose is to make you guys aware of what's going on. Because Zillow, by far, is one of the most visited real estate sites. When folks are out looking for properties and so forth. So it's good to know what's going on with that site and what's going on in their world. So let's take a quick peek over here in the chat before we jump in. Let's see. Alex says interesting proposal of the 50-year mortgage. Yep, not even a 50-year treasury. Yep, 100% agree. We're going to touch on that. We got Kaylee, hello. And MHO8 is not out grocery shopping. They're here in the house. Hallelujah. Brenda says, very sternly, realtors and sellers are price gouging. We need pricing restrictions to protect buyers. Well, I guess that depends on what seat you're sitting in. Because if you're a seller, I don't think you're not thinking that necessarily. I think there's always two sides of the story, but for sure, as a buyer, it is not easy right now, by far. And let's see here. We've got Miss Ace says, congrats on that win, Jen. Yay! Thank you. Congrats on the win for my clients. I don't want to take this. It's not about me. It's about them. For sure. Let's see. MH says I got offered an early retirement package. Not sure if that's a win. We'll just say it is, because maybe you want to, maybe you don't. But you know what? You got options. Options are a win. For sure. We got Angie. Good. You're all reliable. Angie, good to see you. Chrissy says China already has 50-year mortgages and maybe even 100-year mortgages. That's bonkers. Generational mortgages. There's a lot of talk about that, about actually having the mortgage transfer with you as opposed to staying with the property. Very interesting. Cindy, with the QQQ already in your experience, what is the most dramatic, creative, or exasperating thing a buyer has ever asked for? Oh, I could tell you stories. Let's shelve that one for right the very moment. So let us dig in to the first topic. Is I want to talk about this housing recession and what actually they are referring to, because the talk of recession is not new. It's not new. You just do a Google search and you'll see that there's been, because of the inflation numbers, because of the employment numbers, because of the consumer confidence index, all of these things have been pointing towards a recession for months, an economic recession. But a housing recession, this is kind of relatively new. So there was an article this week that pointed to this article last week on November 3rd. And it says the U.S. housing market, along with other segments of the economy, may already be in a recession because the Federal Reserve has not been aggressive enough cutting interest rates, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says Sunday. So Bessent is saying that it's all on the interest rates. The reason why we are heading into a housing, or may already be in a housing recession, solely on the interest rates. I got thoughts about that. I'll share in a minute. It says, I think we're in good shape, but I think that there are sectors of the economy that are in recession. And the Fed has caused a lot of distributional problems with their policies. So if the Fed brings down mortgage rates, then they can end this housing recession. I'm going to tell you right now, I strongly disagree with you, bud. Strongly disagree. And I'm going to tell you why in a second. It says the Fed is adding that the low-income consumers are being hit hardest. I agree. By the purported downturn because they have debts rather than assets. I don't agree with that. I think that the low-income consumers are being hit hardest because the price of properties has gone up. Yes, they have debt. It's across the board. But it goes on to say the Fed does not set mortgage rates directly. I talk a lot about this. How the Fed rate, when they drop the Fed rate, it does not have a direct connection to mortgage rates. The mortgage rates tend to follow the yields of the long-term bonds, which are influenced by investor expectations. Oftentimes, you're going to see very often that mortgage rates will go down before the Fed adjusts the rate in anticipation of the Fed. If there's a strong anticipation that the Fed is going to adjust that rate, you will see, and we saw it. We saw it a couple weeks ago. It was low. It was lower before they Fed lowered the rate last week. They did that. Did the same thing last year. So it says while now this is Joel Berner, who is a senior economist over at Realtor.com. Says while the Fed could have some impact on the health of the housing market, lower mortgage rates and stronger home buyer sentiment require improvements to the rest of the economy as well. Now we're talking. It is not just everybody would like to point a finger. It's like the thing to do. It's like the in thing. If you have young people in your lives, you hear about this god awful trend, the 6-7. I know it's after a song. It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Maybe that's because I'm I'm an aging Gen Xer, but that's the in thing. Well, the in thing right now is to point fingers and say this one person's responsible, and to point their finger solely at the Fed is not that's not the entire answer. Lowering the rates is not going to help the housing market because we don't have enough houses to satisfy demand. How does lowering rates help the housing market? Not to mention, if we have a recession, if we have an inflationary issue and low consumer confidence, we've already seen the interest rates drop from sevens down to low sixes. Okay, they may continue to go down, and the market has not substantially improved. Why? Because people are nervous. People are nervous. They're pulling back. They're getting laid off. They're getting packages. Early retirement packages, all the things. There's a lot more to unpack there. It says that it goes on to say that at the last meeting last Wednesday, after the live stream last week, and they did exactly what we thought they were going to do and lowered the rate. And it says the next day, the average rate, and this was, again, investor influenced, the average rate on a 30-year fixed home loan fell to 6.1%, the lowest level in a year. Well, since then it has bounced back up. Why? Because it's influenced by it's influenced by investors and treasury bonds. It goes on to say that Trump appointed federal governor Stephen Moran, who is two of the policymakers to vote for a larger half-point reduction of the latest FOMC meeting, warned in an interview with the New York Times published Saturday that the central bank's reluctance to cut rates could lead to a recession. And then Bissett sounded a similar note, arguing that the Trump administration has reduced government spending, which should result in a lower inflation rate. Do I need to even comment on that? Yeah, I'm a little feisty tonight, guys, if you haven't noticed. A little ramped up. But on the same note, the inflation rate has not gone down, it's gone up. Things have gotten more expensive over the last 6 months. If inflation is dropping, then the Fed should be cutting rates. It's not an easy conversation. It's not an easy fix. It says there's much uncertainty in the economy that adds to the differential between the Fed's target rate and the rate available to home buyers. We know this. But is the housing market in a recession? Well, it says that, Berner would not go as far to say that the housing market is currently in a recession. But he said it might be in danger of entering one on several key factors. Home sales are on a pace the slowest year since 1995. Even more recently, as mortgage rates have fallen, the number of sales have not picked up enough to close the gap. Goes on and says the builders, are pulling back and delivering high volumes of low-priced new homes, so on and so forth. And I'm actually going to get into that a little bit more in depth, because I've got another article that talks about, what actually will happen if we do enter a housing market recession, what it means for the housing market if that happens. Here's the thing. Again, I don't truly believe, based on all the indicators, based on everything that I've seen, and having been in this industry, it'll be 30 years this come June, and I've gone through the great financial crisis, and I've gone through 9/11, and now through the pandemic. It is not just interest rates. It is a combination of all the things. But where we're sitting now, where groceries are all-time high, if you can afford to get groceries, and people not eating and all that, whatever. Won't get into that conversation. But it's the cost of insurance. I live in Plymouth, Massachusetts. I live not near the water. I have, you know, perfect driving record. Well, let's say last 10 years, 10, 15 years, like no accidents, speeding tickets, knock on wood. I'm a little superstitious. There's no reason. However, my homeowner's insurance doubled in 2 years. Doubled. Why? My auto insurance is going up. So my car's a 2017. Why? These are the things that factor in. It doesn't matter if the interest rates are lower. If all of these factors are increasing. Anyways, all right, let's jump over the chat and let's see what's popping over here. See what you guys are talking about. Right. I love it. I love getting that interaction. Miss Q, Jenny, thoughts on the 50-year mortgage. I'm going to talk about that in a second. Stay tuned. Stay tuned. Let's see. At that point, I am going through the comments. A lot of the stuff that you're asking about with the 50-year mortgage, we're going to get to, guys. Joe, I sold my house, got 5 offers. Yeehaw. Woohoo. First offer was 3 days. It was listed MLS. Wow. Thanks to you, I negotiated the fee down on the buyer's agent. The offer came in at the first open house. I am so happy for you. I am so happy for you. Advocating for yourself and getting out there and getting to it. I love it. Congratulations. Congratulations. Big win. Let's see. Lots of conversations happening here. And let's see. Sorry, guys. I am Kenneth says, selling my home near Emerald Isle, North Carolina. List now or wait till spring? Okay, I'm going to give you the answer that I give. It's probably not the answer you're looking for, but it is the answer that you should receive. And the answer is, when is it a good time for you? When is it a good time? Why do you want to move? And when is it a good time for you? If your reason for moving is related to health or family or job or better quality of life, and you are financially able to do that, and you have a plan, and there's no reason for you to wait, then don't wait. There are pros and cons to every month of the year. There's pros and cons to every month of the year. You sell now, you are absolutely going to have in the norm. Now, there's always going to be exceptions to the rule. Florida is an exception to the rule with this. This time of year is their busy time of season. But on the norm, say here in the Northeast or most parts of the country, you get toward the holidays, things settle down, things quiet down. There are fewer buyers. So you're going to have less traffic. The flip side is the buyers that are out there, and I can tell you with 100% confidence, their buyers do not stop buying 12 months out of the year. I have been at this game a long time, and I have not worked 12 months out of the year. It does ebb and flow in terms of how many people are buying and selling their homes, how many people are moving, but it doesn't stop. And the thing you want to remember is the buyers that are out there, if they're out there now through, say, the end of January, they're serious. They're not going to mess around. They need to move. There's a strong why. Just like you have a strong why to sell, they're going to have a strong why to buy. So going into it with that proper expectation, then you won't be disappointed when you don't have, line of people out the door. But if you want to wait, if you're like, you know what, I don't really need to move during the holidays and family time and blah, 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 and all the things, then wait. There's pros and cons to selling in the spring as well. Yes, historically, prices go up in the spring. They tend to flatten out a little bit in the winter. If you are not buying another property in the winter, that might be a consideration. But if you're buying another property, that means if the prices are flattening out here, they're going to flatten out where you're going too. And the same thing's going to happen in the spring. Prices are you'll get a higher sale price, but guess what? You're going to pay more wherever you're moving to. The other downside is you have more competition. When you go to buy, you have more to choose from. So you can see where there is no best time based on the market. There's no best time. That's why I feel very strongly that you've got to look at your own personal situation and make sure that all your ducks are in a row. If you are like, I really want to be more, I want to be packed more, I want to spend more time cleaning or purging, then wait and do that's your winter project. But it's at the timing. Sorry if that was a long-winded answer, but I feel like that is probably one of the most asked questions, and I do my homework. I listen to the other YouTubers that are out there and other people and talk to agents. And you know what? I feel like it's very self-serving when they are, when an agent is just like, oh, wait till spring. It's a busy time. Well, if they don't even know what your situation is, how can they say that? How can they say that? They're not listening. Active listening skills. It's one of the things I look for in my referral partners, for sure. Thank you for that question. Fantastic. MH08 $11.99 for 90% ground beef. Good Lord. Yeah, chicken and pork. Or maybe it's time to become a vegetarian. I don't know. Good golly. Susan MVB. I love your avatar, by the way. Oh my goodness. Is that somebody from your that baby's adorable. The amount that is saved on the monthly mortgage payment will be completely overshadowed by the slower rate of, oh, you must be talking about the 50-year mortgage. We're going to get into that in a second. 110%. Yeah, you guys really want to talk about that. We're gonna get into that very, very, very shortly here. Awesome sauce. Let's see. All right. I want to, so real quick, since we're talking about recession, if we do start heading down the path of an economic recession, what does that mean for housing market? Because it means different things for different, depends on how you get there. It depends on, what the state of the economy is at the present time. And this article came out, this article is not, this is in April, doesn't matter. The data, we're not going to look at the data per se, we're going to look at the methodologies. And I'm just going to scroll right down here what a recession would mean for home prices and sales, which is really what we're worried about, right? If you're looking to buy or sell, that's what it's all about. And it says, by definition, recession brings higher unemployment. We don't know what the unemployment numbers are. The government supposedly is reopening, but those numbers haven't been released yet. Increasing financial strain for many households. As a result, buyer demand pulls back and home sales fall. Well, unemployment is not the only thing that's causing financial strain, right? That is not the only thing that's causing financial strain, which I just talked about with all the insurance and HOA and all the things. It says falling buyer demand would put downward pressure on home prices as for sale inventory starts to pile up and spends more time on the market. However, there's a big asterisk here, guys. The housing market is already fairly soft. With home sales near record lows last year, home sales were at the slowest in 1995. Early data from this year has shown little improvement. Again, we're going to take this with a grain of salt because of the fact that this article is from April. A lot of this, and that's why I'm going to skip over all of this data because it's not relevant, but this is relevant. It says regions with more home supply, such as the South, would likely see home prices fall more quickly in a recession as buyer demand pales in comparison to already ample home supply. Undersupplied areas such as the Northeast would see prices hover longer before falling as the pullback in demand actually allows for more balance in the market. We're already seeing this. We've seen this in the South. I'm seeing it in the Northeast. Things are, price and presentation is absolutely still more critical than ever. Uh, they're selling relatively quickly, but it's the time to days to offer. I talked to you guys about watching the median days to offer in your market because that will, number one, manage your expectations, but number two, help you understand what is actually happening in your market. Is it starting to shift? And it's happening at different times. I was interviewing an agent down in Chattanooga, Tennessee today, and she's starting just in the last month, 2 months. They're starting to see a shift where they didn't see before. All of a sudden, properties are staying on the market longer. That's when you start to see the price reductions because now you've got to stay ahead of that, that change. It says, however, although a severe recession can force some homeowners into selling because they no longer are able to afford their mortgages. And this is important. Most current homeowners, 54%, have a mortgage with a rate of below 4% and are relatively well equipped to make their housing payment. There was a lot of talk, in prior, over the last month or so about foreclosures. Oh, there's a wave of foreclosures coming. If there's equity, the only way a person forecloses is if they choose not to sell the property and they just let it go to the bank. That's a voluntary decision. But if you have equity, I mean, yes, there are folks that they bought properties that were probably overvalued and they put very small down payments. This time during the pandemic, that did not happen. There were large down payments, cash, cash, and then they only financed maybe 50% or less. The amount of equity that exists in the homes now is a huge cushion that wasn't there before. So a lot of folks are not going to be forced into foreclosure unless you have a dire need to sell. Is the recession going to force prices lower? Potentially, yes, but does that mean there's going to be more inventory? No, I don't think so. I think a lot of folks will take a step back and say, you know what, we're going to stick a pin in it. There's no emergency for us to sell, so we're going to stick a pin in it, and we'll wait and we'll see what's going to happen. There'll be a lot of folks that'll say I need to do that, and that's great, but it's not going to be a fire sale. It really is not. So, because of all of this data, not because I said so. It doesn't matter what it's not, yes, I'm giving you my opinion, but I'm basing my opinion on data. The data doesn't support that. Home builders who are already facing cost pressure from tariffs would likely pull back sharply on new construction in a recession. We're already starting to see that, exasperating the existing housing supply gap. We're seeing that. We've seen that over the summer. We saw that in the fall with builders pulling back, having offering buy downs and extra bonuses to get to clear out their inventory. They want to clear it out because they don't want to get stuck. It says, in short, the impact of a recession on the housing market could be noticeable without being catastrophic. And primarily an extension of pre-existing trends, fewer buyers, rising inventory, softening prices. If home prices did correct, however, homeowners are in a healthy position to absorb the adjustment after enjoying rapid equity expansion due to rising home prices in recent years. This is why when I say week after week, the crash is not imminent. A crash is not imminent. Why? Because of the equity that's in the market, because of the positions of these homeowners to be able to take a step back. We will see changes. We have seen changes. We're going to continue to see softening. It's going to regulate. We're feeling it in the Northeast. Finally, we're feeling it in the Northeast. Is it going to be noticeable? Yeah, it has been noticeable. Is it going to be catastrophic? No. No, it's not. It's different than 2008. I have seen so many darn videos, comparing 2008 to 2025. And it's ridiculous. Why? Because 2008, that was the era, it was a mortgage-driven crash. No doc loans, speculative lending. You could go in, and if you could fog a mirror, they'd give you money. Of course, those people are going to bail and walk away and do short sales when the market crashed. They have no equity. They have no equity. They have nothing to lose. There's nothing to lose. Maybe they made small down payments. That is a stark contrast to where we're at now. Stark contrast. Because even those that didn't buy, myself included, I refinanced. The refinance rate, you don't hear about the refinancing. The refinance boom was huge during pandemic. So you can't just look at the people that bought houses during the pandemic. You got to think about all the people that refinanced and got into lower interest rates, which is why the number's so high. That people have that cushion. It says what a recession would mean for mortgage rates, and this is where it's going to tie into to that conversation about the 50. It says mortgage rates typically fall during a recession as investors shift their money to bonds for reliable returns as they ride out uncertainty. An economic downturn would also prompt the Federal Reserve to loosen monetary policy, resulting in lower borrowing costs. Although Fed policy primarily affects short-term borrowing costs, and it indirectly influences long-term interest rates as well. I'm going to say something that might be a little controversial, but you know what? Darn it! Like we're in an environment right now where I feel like every day it's shock and awe, drama, drama, drama. Save your drama for your mama. I'm tired of it. But everything is all There's always some hidden agendas on things, and half the time when you read this stuff, and this is why I want you guys to read through this stuff, do the research so you can advocate for yourself. But a lot of these decisions, you have to question, well, why is he recommending this? He said, well, we don't want to lower the rate because, we're not heading into a recession. Well, who says that we're not heading into a recession? Is it the person that is blindly trying to tell and make the public believe that we're not in a recession? Even though it's not data-based, it's not fact-based. How in touch are these people with the average working person? That's what I want to know. The average run, Joe and Sally, Smith, who are trying to make ends meet. How in touch are they? I think at the top of the hill, not so much, but that's neither here nor there. I want to be optimistic and try to believe that some things are happening, but yeah, you have to question. You got to question everything. It says lower rates in a recession would certainly benefit existing homeowners seeking to refinance, but for prospective homebuyers, the fear of losing their jobs might outweigh the benefit from lower rates. That is it in a nutshell, guys. This is why the lower rates is not the answer. There's so many other factors going on and coming into play that it's to take into consideration, to ignore the recession, to ignore the unemployment numbers, is to make false assumptions about the Fed fixing it. Maybe because it looks good on paper. It looks good. It's a good sound bite, which, to be perfectly honest, that's exactly what the 50-year mortgage is. You like that segue? I didn't plan it. The 50-year mortgage is a good soundbite. I think it's something that is, it's something that you say at a podium to say that I'm going to defend you, and no, it's going to sound great. When the rubber meets the road, is the 50-year mortgage actually, number one, is it feasible? Number two, is it a good idea? Is it a huge mistake? Well, the first thing that you absolutely have to take into consideration when you get a 15-year mortgage versus a 30-year mortgage, you get a lower rate on a 15-year mortgage. Why? There's less risk. There's a shorter payoff period, there's less risk. That's why people get 15-year mortgages, because it's a lower rate. You pay a higher rate with a 30-year mortgage. What do we think a 50-year mortgage is going to do? It sounds great, but how much money are you going to be saving? And actually, I have a graph for that. I'm just going to scroll right down to it. So this is a hypothetical, and this is Fast Company, which I like their data. This is on a $400,000 mortgage payment. Okay, this is a mortgage amount, $400,000. Okay, so you've got a 15-year, and this is accurate in the sense that they're basing this on a 30-year mortgage at 6.2%. Okay, which is right around where the interest rates are right now. 30-year mortgage, $2,455, $2,455. 15-year, you're going to save some money on the 5.5%. We're not even talking about long term. on how much interest you're going to pay over 15 years versus 30 years. We're just talking payment at the moment. So you have a lower rate, but you have a lower time period. Amortization, you're taking that mortgage amount plus your interest rate amount, your interest that you're going to pay, and you're condensing it over a 15-year period. It's going to be more money. So your payment's going to jump up to $32.68. This is why not everybody does a 15-year mortgage, because you've got a shorter amount of time, obviously, to pay the note. Well, longer would be better, right? Lower payments? Not necessarily. Very unlikely. If and I think this is modest. I think this is really modest, but they use the example of jumping, say, at 6.22%. If the 50-year existed, we're going to do a hypothetical estimation of 6.64%, which I would, I think that's on the conservative side. It's actually, it says that, the estimate says roughly 42 to 57 basis points higher than a 30-year. This is a leading analyst from Housing Wire tells Resi Club. The Resi Club's a data source that I rely on. I think their data is good. It says he says the estimates a 50-year mortgage would carry an interest rate roughly 42 to 57 basis points higher than the 30-year. And this is where they're coming up with these numbers. Again, these are coming from people that crunch these numbers that are far smarter than I am. But I agree with where they're going with it. So at that 6.64% at a 50-year note, how much money are you saving? $2,450 down to $2,300, $130 a month you're saving. How much is the repayment? I think we have. Oh, did they include the numbers? Oh, yeah, here we go. This is the total interest paid on this is on paid over 50-year balloons. So on that $400,000 example, a 30-year borrower would pay roughly $483,000 in interest. It's a total of $883,000 for that loan. A 50-year, it balloons to $980,000. Let that sink in for a second. $1.2 million on a $400,000 loan because you stretched it out over 50 years. This is danger zone, guys. This is danger zone. There's a lot of ways that you can slice this. Lenders will charge more for a longer term because of additional risk and so forth. There is a lot of ways that you can slice this, and there are different ways that would require overhauling the mortgage system, like having the mortgage travel with you. That has been, that is something I was watching, doing some research on this, and watched some content that talked about other countries do this, where you have that, instead of starting all over with another brand new 30-year mortgage, you'd actually take that with you. No, I'm not a mortgage professional, so I can't get into the weeds in terms of how that actually looks, but suffice to say, you're not paying your 30-year mortgage until you're 90. But on a 50-year note, my daughter is turning 24 in a week and a half. 24 years old. If her and her boyfriend, she's not even married yet, bought a house on a 50-year note, she's going to be almost 75 before she paid that off. That's 30 years is bad enough. 30 years is bad enough. But not only that, say she doesn't, the average time frame that a buyer, a homeowner, the average time they move, the extra time that they live in a home right now is about, they're saying it's about 12 years, before you sell and buy another home. And it's got, I'll be honest, it has grown over the years. It used to be 5 and then went to 7 and so forth. And we're at like 12 years or so. So even at 12 years, great. When you look at the amortization schedule and you get a mortgage day one on a 30-year note, the majority, and I wish I should have pulled up a graph on this. The majority of your mortgage payment is interest. And the amount of interest you pay, it slowly changes. So right after, it's about year, 17 or 20, it finally flips. And you can actually, that's where, if you can chop 7 years off your mortgage, if you make an extra payment every year, guys, make 13 payments. I know it's tough, and not to think about that, especially if you're on fixed income or money's tight, to think about it is out of the question. But if you can make 13 payments a year instead of 12, 7 years, it cuts off your mortgage. That 30-year now becomes a 23-year mortgage. Not only that, but that flip point of where it goes from mostly interest to mostly principal comes a lot quicker. Why is that relevant? Well, the more you pay down the principal, the more equity you have. The more you pay down the principal, the more equity you have. When you go to sell that house, the more equity you have, the more money you have for your next house. If you have a 50-year note, you're not touching that principal for a long time, which means for a home buyer that might be just barely able to scrape together 3%, 5%, and they put that down payment down, and you have closing costs, and the closing costs will be a little higher because they're higher from 15 to a 30, the closing costs are higher. They charge you, fees associated with that loan. The fees will likely be presumably a little higher in the 50. So the recapture on that is longer. It's a dangerous, dangerous proposition. We're in a period of time when people are defaulting on car loans. They're getting into debt. If we go into a recession, credit card debt is going to go through the roof. It just is. Because people, if you can't afford to eat, you can't afford to buy groceries, you're not going to, if you have a credit card, you're not going to go hungry. You're not going to let your kids go hungry. You'll go into debt before you let them go hungry. Period. You're going to go into debt before you go hungry. So the credit card, if we go into a recession, that's going to happen. Now you're talking about raising the 50-year. I think it's word salad. I think it's a classic case of throwing the consumer, the American, the American home buyers and home sellers, throwing them a bone to say, we're thinking about you, whatever, without really any execution and really thought behind it. It's a terrible idea. And I'm sorry. Again, maybe I'm a little jaded. Try to give people the benefit of doubt. I'm open to ideas, all the things. But when you're sitting with a pocket full of cash, it's easy to throw out these ideas. If you're not actually in the day-to-day struggling, it's hard to understand what the person that is struggling is going to have to go through when they sign for this stuff. And and this also opens up a whole level of predatory lending, which is scary, which is absolutely scary. And actually, that's going to be a segue into the Zillow lawsuit in a second, which I want to share with you guys. But those are my thoughts. I want to hear what you guys have to say. So now I'm going to jump in the chat and see what's popping. All right, what do you guys got to say? What do you got to say? Yeah, the MA choices get that 50-year loan, that 50-year note, and then the insurance company will tell you roof needs replacement. This is the thing. The savings, it's a scary proposition. It really is. I think it is way more risk than benefit. For the same reason why, I went and helped my daughter, and we went and looked, she bought her first car last year. And the used car, the beater car, I guess you call it in this day and age, that I got her when she got her license, finally got her through college, but it was on its last leg. So time to get rid of it, trade it in. So she found a very reasonable, Nissan Sentra, a very reasonable car, but was going to require some financing. And so when we were looking at the options, and this is all going to be on her, we sat down and I couldn't believe they were pushing 7-year notes. 7 years on a car loan? It was gross. So needless to say, she did not do that. She did not do that. She listened to her ma, which was nice. Skate says there might be a case where a 50-year mortgage serves a need. No problem with it being an option, but it's not something most people use. I think I agree with you. I think the problem lies in the fact that there will be people that will be influenced and talked into doing a 50-year mortgage. There will be people that will, try to capitalize on that. I heard this week that Pulte, the home builder Pulte, national builder, is already working on offerings of a 50-year mortgage as part of their new construction. I mean, they don't care if you pay this thing until you're in, at your grave. They don't care. They just want to unload the new construction. They see it as opportunity. And I think it a lot of folks that will be wooed with the idea of, instead of, looking at the big picture, they're going to say, "Oh, I can save $150, $200. Sure, I can do that." Dangerous. Um, yeah, why not a 70-year, right? Seriously. It is crazy. Crazy, crazy. Yeah, Michael, as the kids would say, or I don't know if they still say it or not. Cray cray. Did they still say that? I don't know. If my kids were watching, they'd probably be rolling their eyes in the back of their head right now. Don't care. Wiggly Arm says, I had the opposite of a win, unfortunately. Oh man, 42 days in the market. Lots of showings, no offers, just dropped the price 20 grand. Wish me luck. Fingers crossed. The hardest part, sorry, itchy nose. The hardest part about the position that you're in, the thing I want to caution you about, and really why I talked about this last week as well, the importance of looking in the mirror and really having a honest talk with yourself, is you don't want to be behind the changes. You need to get in front of it, which may hurt. If you see something in the neighborhood that sold a month ago and your house is still not selling, so you don't price it to keep up, you price it to get ahead. So maybe I'm hoping the 20 will do it. If it's not, the next price adjustment, you're going to have to go a little bit more than you think. In a depreciating market, which is where, if the prices are moving, that's where they're going across the country. It may be a slow slide, which you also got to look at the comps. You got to be so careful, so careful. If your comps are 6 months old, forget it. 3 months old, forget it. As you can look at those comps, but you've got to make sure you make an adjustment for the time that those comps, when they sold. And do not, please, guys, don't price your house based on your neighbors that are not under contract. Don't price it based on pending unless you know what it's under contract for. Because all you're doing is now following it's the blind leading the blind. And it doesn't, but I'm going to keep my fingers crossed for you. 110%. Chris Pickles says, looking to purchase a home in 2027. What would be a good time to buy within that time frame? I could jump all in now. I know the world's unpredictable, but would love your input. You know what? I appreciate you asking, and I don't know when you jumped on the live stream, but I talked a little bit about this earlier, about the fact that truly, you got to get your house in order. Your own personal financial house, your emotional house. You got to get the reason why you want to buy in the first place. You got to get that in line and make sure that your ducks are in a row. If your ducks are in a row, you're financially solid, means you got your down payment, at the current mortgage rates, you're comfortable, you have reserves, job solid, all the things, all the check boxes. Well, then start casually looking. I mean, honestly, if you're ready to go, now is a great time. Why? Because we're heading into the typical slow season. And sellers are going to be willing to talk. Ask Wiggly Arm Guy. If you walked up to that house, I'm not talking stealing the house. I'm not talking about making ridiculously low offers unless it's warranted. But will you have more leverage now versus the spring? Yes. Who knows what's going to happen in 2027? But I guess the bigger question is, forget about the market in terms of, leading your decision, but in your personal situation, you're doing an inventory of your personal situation. What is your situation now? Are you selling or are you renting? Are you living for free? What is it costing you now? And what will it cost you if you wait? If you're in a situation where you're renting, well, now you're missing a year and a half, a little over a year of equity building. Prices, yes, prices are going to slide, but prices are not going to catastrophically plummet. They're not. Why? Because sellers won't let that happen. Why? Not because they're stubborn, not because they're greedy, but because they can. They have the equity. They made the decision to put a down payment, a large down payment. They made a decision to just refinance and stay put. I'm not selling. I've been in my house 25 years. I do have a mortgage because I made a lot of bad decisions in the market crash in '08. We all have scars, financial scars. It's how we learn. But does that make me greedy? No, it's just it's because of the fact. I mean, if somebody offered me $2 million tomorrow, I may think about it. But I'm not. My house is not in order in the sense that I'm not mentally anywhere near thinking about selling. But hopefully that helps you. Like I said, you got to get your house in order, your mental house, your financial house. What everything looks like, and if everything's in line, start shopping online. Start shopping online and there's nothing saying you have to go full bore, but if you see something you like and you see yourself living there and you can afford it and it checks the boxes, why not? Why wait when you can be happy today instead of waiting? Because I've seen that happen. I've seen that happen. And people wait when they think they're timing the market or buying when they should buy that is outside of their personal circumstance, and then they regret waiting. That's my 2 cents. I like big mugs, but my kids bought me this mug for Christmas a couple years ago, so I like the personal mugs. I thank you, but yeah, you know what? It's just laziness. I'll be honest. It's like I don't have to walk down to the kitchen. Fewer trips because it holds more liquid, and definitely drink tea. All tea. I don't drink coffee anymore. My stomach can't handle it. Tea drinker for 30 years. Yes, I agree with you, Angie. Not a great option, but definitely an option. All right, let's dun 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 dun. All right, we get Parrot 22 head. Is that any takeoff of Jimmy Buffett? Just curious. Anywho, QQQ will be relocating to Arizona from Rhode Island. Son lives there. Family is a big reason to move right now. Huge reason why people are moving. Rhode Island home I paid off. No bet. Good for you. Recent divorce. You know what? Boy, you got options. The big option that you have is if you're planning to sell the house in Rhode Island, you don't have to sell that first. You can take your time, find the house in Arizona, negotiate, buy it, take out a temporary, you could take out if you don't have cash, if you don't have liquid assets, you could do an equity loan, an equity line of credit on your current home to pull some of that cash out to use temporarily as a down payment. You want to be super clear what the terms are and when you can pay that off. If you have to hold that open for a certain period of time, a lot of them will say if you close it within a first year, there's like a $200 penalty or something. I know that's the one I have has that kind of thing on it. The other thing is if you do plan on selling Rhode Island, you cannot take a home equity line of credit, any kind of equity, while the house is on the market. That's a big no-no. They will deny you all day long. So you want to make sure you get all that, squared away, but it'll give you choices. Then you can move and then put the house on the market, take your time selling it, all the things. Food for thought. Food for thought. Let's see. Oh, you know what? There's actually you posted a couple times here. Let's see. What's your opinion on renting currently? No debt. You could totally do that as well. So my brother and his wife and family, his kids moved down to Texas, down to Austin, and they have a great airport, by the way. Austin Airport is amazing. Cute airport. But they were leaving Massachusetts for the first time, and his wife has family down there, but they had no idea where they wanted to live. And he had a new job, he's getting situated, whatever. They made the decision to sell and then rent. They rented a year, I think, 2 years, year and a half, something like that. To scope out the area. They want to make sure that that's where they wanted to plant roots and all the things, and they ended up buying just recently. But that's not an uncommon thing to do. By no means. It's actually can be very liberating, because now you've got your cash. Now you don't have to worry about, well, what happens if the Rhode Island market crashes? Highly unlikely, but what if? Anything could happen, right? If you know how much money you're working with, it does make it easier to make that purchase as opposed to buying hypothetically. So totally. It's just a matter of, there's a lot of different ways, options are your greatest tool. It's your, to have that is very empowering. Huge. Yeah, Angie says, no comparison to 2008. People kept refinancing and pulling money out of their home, which is not, does that happen? That'll always happen. Just like people always make bad decisions. It just is. Is it happening like mad? No, because people were buying speculative. They were making speculative purchases. Speculative buying was huge before the crash. Not right now. Everybody's pulling back because of the inflation keeps going up and uncertainty and all the things. Let's see. Norton's just logged in, been unpacking, closed 11/3 on a new home, but says still have my original home, no offers. Hang in there. Congratulations. Huge congratulations to you, for sure. Hang in there. Hang in there, hang in there. It will happen. It will happen, it will happen. I've never seen a house that hasn't been sold. There's no such thing as an unsellable house. It's just a matter of finding the right price that buyers are willing to pay. Angie says, asks if lower rates would help homeowners that already have a low rate to move. That is very true. And thanks for bringing that up, because you're absolutely correct. If you have a low rate now, and they made the example, I think it was like 54% have an interest rate of 4% or below. If we close that gap, we get down in the fives, and that gap starts to close, that is part of your financial house. That's part of the decision making. That's part of, well, if I have to sell and buy at a higher rate, that means I can't afford that, or it's too big of a bite for me to bite, or whatever, whatever analogy you want to use. But having that next payment be closer to what you're paying now, 100% will influence folks to say, you know what, I will sell now. I will move. I want to move anyways, but now I can afford to. Let's see. Charlton says, do you think Americans are dumb enough to fall for this? Is the new trickle-down metro? You know what? It's not, Charlton, I would say it's not about dumb Americans. It's about it's like uninformed. And I think that there's also, it's always going to be targeting. There's always going to be, oh gosh, what's the word? I'm having word retrieval issues at the moment. Predatory. There's the word I was looking for. There's going to be predatory lending. There's always predatory lending. And this, for someone that doesn't do their homework, it's not about being dumb. It's about not, being so focused and wanting that house so bad. You want your piece of the American pie. You want to have a place that the landlord's not going to kick you out of. You want your own home. I had a first-time home buyer once that was in their late 60s. And they said to me, Jen, and it actually broke my heart. They're like, do you think they'll even approve us for a loan? Because we're going to be dead by the time the 30 years comes. And I said, they can't discriminate against you because of your age. So yes, you can get a mortgage, doesn't matter how old you are. But I said, I was in awe that that they finally said, now is the time. And when you get to that point where you're like, I want to do it, it's not about being dumb. It's about the frame of reference and level of information. Because the problem is they're gonna powers that be are gonna frame something like this in all the ways that it's good, and they're not gonna talk about what you should be looking out for and taking into consideration, because that would poke holes in it. My 2 cents. Let's see. Skate says, what would complement offering 50-year mortgages is offering almost no cost refinancing with the same lender. Very interesting. That's very interesting. It's a good idea. Let's see. Yeah. Miss H says, thinking back, if younger, would you do a 50-year marriage? Why would a younger person do that? Well, you know what? If things were different, I mean, I was going on 25 years with mine. Is it possible? I think when I see couples that are together for 50 years, I think it's wonderful. They're usually deeply in love. They can tolerate each other for that long. The key is change. Everybody changes. But this is not the Oprah Winfrey show, so we won't get into that or whatever not. Let's see here. Yeah, so Angie says, don't you think people would be smart enough to refi after a while? Again, smart enough, opposite of being not dumb, I guess. But I mean, you would hope. But here's the thing: is how do you refining would mean at some point in time, unless you had a huge chunk of money to contribute, and you can do reamortizations of loans. You can do a refinance. But the thing is that if you get accustomed to that lower payment, even if it's $200 a month, you get accustomed. Your life is built around that payment. To turn around and go from a 50 to a 30 or a 30 to a 15 would mean now all of a sudden that payment is going to increase. And I think that that's something that from the long term, people think about today. Everybody lives in today. The mindset is, I want it and I want it today. That is just the way we are. This is why, as a country, we have the lowest savings record in our history. People aren't saving. They don't withdraw. They don't. And I am guilty. I'm guilty of having the 3 a.m. menopausal, can't sleep, scrolling on YouTube. I see a tool that I'm like, oh, I wonder how much that costs. I jump over to Amazon. I'm like, oh, it's only $25. I need that. I don't need it. But the dopamine hit. Yes, I do. So I buy it. And then sometimes I wake up in the morning and try to cancel it. But that's neither here nor there. This is the society that we're in. That instant gratification. It's hard to turn off. It's hard. Sometimes I think these, recessions and stuff are a good thing because it forces people to do exactly that. Let's see here. Oh, we got somebody. Australian Jason. As an Australian, it blows my mind that you have fixed rate for 30 years in the US, but also increasing it to 50 years. Mind-boggling. Yeah, so it's interesting. You go into our neighbors to the north, the Canada, they do not have 30-year fixed rate mortgages, or the rate floats, which is mind-blowing to us. But yeah, it's a different kind of crazy, I think. I have 30-year fixed rate mortgage. Let's see. Yes, I'm gonna get to Zillow. Yeah, you know what? Yeah, Michael says, what's going on with Zillow? Let's see. Let's see what Miss H says. How would that proposal of 50-year affect your job working with buyers and sellers? Would you want to discuss that with people? I think it starts with the lender, a trusted lender, because at the end of the day, I'm not a mortgage professional. And I don't get into the weeds with the details of the financials for a particular buyer. And that, to be honest, is, unless they want to tell me, it's none of my business, on their debt and how much they, I will have conversations about whether they have budgets set up and ample reserves, especially on first-time home buyers. But when you get into the weeds of the finances, that is really that's where I really encourage them to deal with talk to a trusted lender to go over options, all the options, and then let them make the decision. But um, it's just like anything else. There's always changes. There's always something else to talk about. Um, which is a segue into, oh, Zillow. Zillow's at it again. Oh, Zillow. This would be number 7 lawsuit for the year. For the year. Zillow faces lawsuit alleging illegal kickbacks in mortgage business. This ties into 100% ties into, you can see how I kind of think about how I'm going to present this. It all ties in together. It says Zillow is sued for allegedly using illegal kickbacks to steer buyers to Zillow home loans in violation of RESPA and consumer protection laws. Okay. Side note, consumer protection laws and disclosure laws strictly prohibit, there are laws in place that prohibit kickbacks, money, bonuses to licensed real estate agents, to licensed mortgage professionals, to attorneys, real estate attorneys. I can legally accept a referral fee from another agent. I refer a client. If that client decides to work with ends up working with that agent and sees it through, they close, the agent gets paid, the agent pays me a referral fee. That has been the way it has been for since the beginning of real estate. It's been the way it has been for 30 years. I've been in this business. That's totally fine. That is legit, all the things. One licensed professional to another. What I can't accept are any bonuses, kickbacks. Home warranting companies will give you $50 if you make a referral. Nope, can't do it. Lenders, Jen, I'll give you a $100 gift card for every client you send me. Nope, lose my license. Attorneys, I'll give you a $50 gift certificate to a local restaurant if you send us a client. Nope, can't do it. We'll lose my license. There are strict laws, not rules, laws, licensing laws that prohibit real estate agents and lenders. This is what's happening here. Zillow has their paid subscriptions for agents. And I know I've kind of talked about this in the past, but just as a reminder, when you have a Zillow preferred agent that is receiving leads from Zillow, and this one of their lawsuits, I'm going to actually jump over it into a second, but one of their lawsuits that I went over, about a month ago, talked about this. They're being sued because you go on a property, you see a property listed, and people were clicking on the agent that was posted in the column to the right, thinking that they were the listing agent. They were not the listing agent. The agent is paid to be there. It's a Zillow preferred agent. Well, this has bled over to the mortgage industry and says Zillow's mortgage business, not just a home website, they're a broker and they have their mortgage business as well, has grown rapidly over the past few years, posting a 57% annual increase in loan origination volume, which rose to $2.3 billion in quarter three, 2025. It says on Friday, Araba Armstrong filed a lawsuit in U.S. District Court in Seattle claiming that Zillow used illegal kickbacks to bolster the rapid growth of its mortgage business. Araba is a first-time homebuyer from Anchorage, Alaska, who purchased a home with the help of a buyer's agent she connected with through Zillow. She claims that she obtained a pre-approval and eventually got her mortgage from Zillow Home Loans at the direction of her agent. The lawsuit alleges that Zillow has violated RESPA, the Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act, and the Washington Consumer Protection Act. As a side note, RESPA came from the great financial crisis. The great financial crisis of '06 to '09 was 100% caused by the mortgage market, predatory lending, all the things. One of the things that came out of that, one of the changes that was made after the fact was, changes to RESPA and disclosures, changes to how properties were appraised. The appraisal rules were changed. Because after all, you know what, kids, if you can't police yourself, then the government steps in and does it for you. That's the way it works. It says, according to the complaint, Zillow pressures agents in its Premier Agent and Flex Lead programs to steer buyers to Zillow Home Loans for their purchase mortgage pre-approvals. Again, the Premier Agent and the Flex Lead programs, these are paid programs that agents buy into. They send, and I'll tell you, some of these programs are thousands of dollars a month. How do I know? Because I can't tell you how many, spam calls, emails I get from Zillow, from Realtor.com. There's a whole slew of them saying, "No, we'll sell you leads. We'll sell you leads." And I have, as true as I'm standing here on both my grandmother's graves, I have never bought a lead. I don't believe in it. I don't believe in it. I think it's disgusting, to be honest, but that's my personal choice. But these are the agents that are buying into this program, the ones that are being suggested in the side column. Zillow steered them. It says, allegedly, agents who sent more clients to Zillow's mortgage arm for their pre-approvals received extra or higher quality leads in exchange. Now, they're saying allegedly because they obviously don't have proof to this fact. I can tell you right now that knowing how these programs work, that is exactly what's happened. That's exactly what you're on a rotation. And if you send them so many Zillow home loan pre-approval applications, you don't think they're going to push you to the top of the list when to stick your name next to $1 million listing? Yeah, they are. And this is what they're being sued for. And it says, if the agents in the Flex program fail to send a sufficient number of leads to Zillow Home Loans for pre-approval, they risk being removed from the program. It says, according to the complaint, Areva was not informed of Zillow's quotas, incentives, or requirements, linking the agent's access to Zillow leads to referrals or pre-approvals with Zillow Home Loans. I'm not surprised. And you know what? My moral compass, this is why, if any of you guys have ever requested a referral from me, I have over communicated to you that if you decide, and there's no pressure, but if you decided to use the agent that I referred to you, there's a referral fee. There's a referral fee. If you want to know how much, then you ask me and I'll let you know. But I want to be transparent as possible. Doesn't matter to me if you know or not. I want you to advocate for yourself and choose the agent that suits you. If you use the agent, great. If it's not a good fit, what? Okay, that's great. I'm glad you're advocating for yourself. That is my goal. Transparency. They don't do that. They do not do that. There is no fine print telling the consumer that, and that's where the problem is. It says the participating agents' fiduciary breaches caused consumers to incur the loan costs. Agents are required to tell consumers this, but they didn't. They did the loan cost. They lose ways to more affordable lending programs. In other words, the agents should be recommending. I mean, you can just like if a buyer says to me, Jen, who would you recommend? I give them a name and then I say, you got to do your homework. This is who I've worked with, but may not be a good fit for you. They may not have the program that you want, yada, yada. Do your homework. Do your homework. It is sticky. It is sticky and it's in, and you know what? Zillow's just having a tough time. This is not their year. I would say they are going on the Santa naughty list this year because they got seven of these suckers. I mean, I don't know. I'll be honest. I don't know how Zillow's getting out of this alive. For me, when I'm doing research, I don't hate Zillow. I really don't, in terms of the amount of information and data they provide, but man, they're making all the wrong moves. They've got the Compass versus Zillow. They're making some awful, they're making it, unfair, bans on listings if they try to, they don't post it on Zillow right away. You've got CoStar, which is another real estate company, large company that owns many, real estate offices. Um, is accusing Zillow of rampant copyright infringement of listing photos. This is primarily when it comes to rentals. And actually there's several that pertaining to rentals. We've got a mid-September, the U.S. District Court in Denver, Samuel James Herrera, who called himself a one-day Zillow employee. He was wrongfully terminated, forced out of the company after he complained of discrimination. I'm telling you, these guys are making all the wrong moves. They're not having a good day. Having a good year. We got regulators versus Zillow, where they claim that they were sued. Redfin and Zillow, they clumped in Redfin in this one too, conspired to eliminate competition in rental listing space, and their syndication agreement violates antitrust laws. It's not good. RESPA claims, and then we've got this program about this lawsuit, this new lawsuit about the Zillow's Flex program, and then the one that I told you about that about a month ago, where they were putting agents and not properly disclosing that the agents that they were being connected to, that if you were to reach out to them, these people thought they were talking to the listing agent and they were not. And they go meet the agent at the property and the agent was not representing them. And then they strong arm them into signing a buyer agency agreement. It's all, anyways. Not a fun time for Zillow. Not a fun time at all. All right, let's see what you guys got. I'm gonna scroll through and looking for the QQQ. If you guys have questions, make sure you put QQQ. Yep, Charlton. Housing crashes, mortgage and banks, not a recession. Isn't this different? It is different in the sense that we have different lending process, and it's like I was talking about earlier in terms of the amount of equity in the housing market. That is much different. The difference being that, yes, unemployment went up, people were losing their jobs and all the things, but if you have an incredible amount of equity, you might decide to stay put. You might decide to sell and go into something smaller and go into a rental. You have choices. It's not gonna be a crash where it's a fire sale, because they have the ability to work, to hold back, and if you're refinanced, you have a low interest rate, you may be able to weather the storm. Cypress says, is a lower DTI, debt to income, that's what that stands for, and a lower down payment better, or a higher debt to income and a higher down payment, wanting to qualify for the most money due to low income? So are you asking about a lower debt to income or a higher debt to income? Well, first off, I'm not a fan of debt, and the scars, the financial scars that I alluded to earlier during the great financial crisis, stemmed from debt. So I am not a fan of carrying any unnecessary debt. I think a housing payment is a unnecessary. It's a necessary evil. Why? Because fortunately, I'm not part of that group sitting at the top of the hill with $1 million in my back pocket. So there's that. But in terms of when you're talking about your DTI, I think the thing that you want to look at is, where is that debt to income? Where is that debt coming from? The thing that I would caution you on is how much credit card debt you have. Credit card debt is a black hole. The interest rates are astronomical. It is a hole that is extraordinarily hard to dig out of, and it gets worse over time. The thing you want to do when you look at, buying a house is, yes, you say, okay, I can afford it now. Great. What if? You want to ask yourself the what ifs. What if I get sick? What if my insurance goes up? What if my taxes go up? Am I in a position to weather the storm? And if you're buying your first house, that's a tough question to answer because it's always uncomfortable, when you are getting into a property for the first time, but you want to have some wiggle room just in case. Just in case all your appliances die at the same time. It happens. And you're like, I don't want to drain my reserves because I may need them to pay my bills, buy my groceries if something happens. So you put it on a credit card and now you've got that added debt. So I would say, here's the thing. Sorry, my train of thought is shifting a little bit. Lower debt to income, lower down payment. The other thing you want to take into consideration on a mortgage interest is tax deductible. Mortgage interest is tax deductible. Car insurance is not. The interest on a car, not car insurance, car loan interest is not. Credit card interest is not. If you have these other things, you have a choice. I would go with a higher mortgage payment in lieu of less debt because of the fact that you can deduct that interest. And you could add substantial money to your bottom line when you file your taxes come April 15th, provided that the government is open. Because, when the government's closed, the IRS is closed, and that's a whole thing. But hopefully that helps. I think that aside from that, you've got to look at your own personal choices. But I'm a big fan of having reserves as much as possible. Nothing to be sorry about. You got a great question. Definitely a great question. Dun, 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 dun. Okay. Chris Pickle says, thank you for your response. You're very welcome. All my ducks are in a row here in the PNW. Currently rent, no other debts. Rent is getting wild. The thing that worries me about rent, and there is a lot of talk about the benefits of renting over owning, that scares me. It scares me. It scares me. It scares me. And I'll tell you why. When you are renting, you are not in control. What do I mean by that? It means somebody else is determining where you live. If that landlord decides decides to sell the property you're in, you're out of luck. You're out of luck. And you may say, well, that's no big deal. I'll just go find another rental. Well, what if you're in a situation where you're in a manageable rent situation? Maybe your landlord hasn't increased to market rate. And now you're getting kicked out. This happened to a friend of my husband's. My friend of my husband's parents were lifelong renters. They rented this house for 40 years, more, a long time. They got a notice one day and it said, we're selling the property and they're raising the house, meaning they're knocking it down because they were building a retirement facility in the lot of land that was behind it. They were in their 70s and they had to now be on the rental market, and they were in a situation where their rent was way under market value. They were in a tough situation. When you're renting, you do not hold the cards. You don't. Now, yes, there's benefits to, you don't, is it less expensive? Potentially, yes. Your water heater breaks. That's the landlord's problem. Yep, I get that. 110%. There are some benefits, but if you're renting a house, you want to plant a garden, you got to check with the landlord. You want to paint a room, you got to check with the landlord. You want to make any kind of alterations, you got to check with the landlord. You're not in control. It's a scary thing. And I think that that's the thing that gets silenced, because, it may be less expensive now, but guess what, guys? Rents are going up. Rent is all based on demand. And if people are choosing, if that unemployment, those unemployment numbers start rising, I talked about all the layoffs in Amazon and Target and Home Depot and UPS last week. Now, granted, a lot of those were, office jobs. They were upper management jobs. They will likely weather the storm. They're going to sell and maybe buy something a little lower. But, when you have rising, unemployment, and you have in a situation where there's more demand, people are not in a position to buy, or they're selling because they can't afford the mortgage, and they're going into a rental, the demand increases. And when demand increases, supply and demand 101, rents will go up. So, anyhow, that's a long-winded commentary to your comment there, Chris. I hope it was helpful. Let's see. Let me go down here. Oh my goodness, you guys are great. Leslie says, my house goes on the market this week. Woohoo! I will lose a large amount based on what I have invested in improvements. Market is horrible. Does it make sense to rent instead of buy again? I'm a senior. Ooh, that is a question that I can't answer for you. I can't. And it goes back to what I was talking about earlier, in that you need to take an inventory on what is going on with you financially, in terms of, debt and income and projected income, family and friends and quality of life and all the things. It may make sense to rent. It may not. I would say it's not just because you're a senior, just because of the age. That is off the table, especially in this day and age. I think that's off the table. But I think you need to look and take a look at all the things that are important to you. If you're at a point where you're like, I just don't want to deal with maintenance, and I'm okay with moving into someplace I don't own, just for the sake of having peace of mind, then rent. Well, it's a quality of life. You've got to decide what the quality of life is that you want, and then have that drive your decisions. So I hope that helps. And also, don't beat yourself up over making improvements and not getting the money back. The thing that I would ask you is, did you enjoy time with those improvements? I mean, if you replaced your kitchen to sell the house, different story. But if you replaced your kitchen and you had 5 years or more of enjoyment, there is nothing you can do about about what your house sells for. It's whatever the market demands. It's whatever a buyer's willing to pay. It is what it is, as they say. It is what it is. So instead of lamenting about what you're losing, focus on what you gained, which was years of enjoyment of that particular renovation. I've spent a lot of money and time making my house the way it is, and a lot of smart. I got a lot of smart home stuff in my house. A lot. Quality of life for me. I know it adds almost no value. And I get that. I don't care. Not that I'm throwing money out the window, but it's what I'm getting in exchange. My quality of life, and what it would, to be able to look at my phone and make sure all doors are locked, lights are off, yada, 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 from my bed, to me, it's a quality of life. I don't have to get up and, after I got all nice and warm and snuggly in my bed, I don't have to get up and actually walk down the basement. It's worth the cost of admission for me. You got to decide that on your own. Let's see here. Paul has re-amortized your marriage. Yes, sir. Oy vey. Oh my goodness. Mark says, what is better for the buyer? Seller buy downs my loan rate, or seller reduces the sale price? Ooh. I think you're gonna make. I think it's gonna. It's well. It's gonna depend on what the buyer sees as a benefit. And as a seller, I would not make that decision, because not everyone's going to see one way or another. I think from a buyer's perspective, I would do buy down all day long because of amortization. Because that buy down, maybe it costs a couple grand right now, is going to be way more than a couple grand in 10 years. Way more. And the amount of interest you save by buying down that interest rate. huge savings. Even though it might be small monetarily in your payment, it's the compound effect of that interest that is you're going to save huge, and that will be evident when you go to sell the house. But you can't make the decision for the buyer. I think, I think that if you're in a situation where you got to look at the market. You got to look at the market. If you're competing with a new home, new construction, a lot of builders are offering buy downs. I would, as a marketing strategy, I would probably advise you to do the same, to compete. Here, it's the price. I would say price it right. Not that it's any less, viable, but it's priced right. Now, if a buyer that comes in, that could be part of negotiation. Buyer comes in and says, I'm making an offer and it's at this amount. That could be something that you reply to an offer. That's your response to an offer. And you say, oh, they're offering 10, 20,000 below asking, let's just say. Instead of responding to that $20,000 below asking and talk just about price, think outside the box and say, what if we reply to, again, it's all about the listing agent knowing what is important with the buyer. As a buyer's agent, the buyer's agent should be trying to figure out what's important to the seller. A good agent will do that and understand. And if the buyer is price sensitive, if they are payment sensitive, and a good listing agent might be able to pick up on that, that is something that instead of coming down on $20,000, you offer them a buy down instead. And say, I'll tell you what, you meet us, we'll drop the price 5,000 and we'll give you a 1 point, half point, whatever, buy down. Conceal the deal. Creative negotiation. It's not all black and white, straightforward. You got to know who the parties are and what's important to them. Let's see. April says, oh boy, sounds like we're ready for another roller coaster. Oh, we've been on a roller coaster. I think it's not going to get, we're not going to see any improvements anytime soon. I really, really, having gone through a lot of roller coasters over my 30-year career, I don't see this writing. I think what's different than 08 was there was stark changes. I mean, the values here dropped 30% like overnight. We will not see those stark changes. We won't. Again, it was driven by the mortgage market. What was happening inside the mortgage with mortgage-backed securities and what the bankers did to impact investors dumping properties and all the things. Mind you, remember all the banks and the bailouts from the banks? It was not housing market generated. This is different. It's going to feel different. It's not going to feel as catastrophic as the article mentioned earlier. There will be changes, but it's going to be much slower. It will adjust, but it's going to be much slower. You decide to wait 6 months, I really truly feel like it's not going to be the type of situation where you go, oh my gosh, I wish I waited 6 months. I would have saved myself $50,000. I don't have a crystal ball, but I don't see any of the warning signs. I know what the warning signs look like. I've worked through it. I've lived through it. They're not there. They're not. And I stand nothing to gain by telling you this stuff. I don't, I'm not your agent. I'm not going to work with probably hardly any of you guys. I'm just here to try to help you advocate for yourself, make the right decisions for yourself. I'm not trying to gain your business, tell you something. I could care less what the real estate industry thinks and trying to impress the real estate industry. I talk a lot to my referral partners, and honestly, I will never defend the real estate industry. I mean, it's hard. It's a lot of work finding those 20% referral partners. It's probably like 10%. It's tough. It's not easy. I won't defend the real estate industry. I do think that a lot of them don't know what the heck they're talking about. But I don't stand anything to gain by telling you one way or another. I'm just letting you know how I see it. And then you guys base your decisions not on me. Do not base your decisions on me. You got to base your decisions on what is right for you. Because you make a decision, somebody said, oh, it was a mistake. It was a mistake, buying or selling. It's not a mistake if it was the best decision at the time, given the information that you had at that time. We all make decisions based on the time and the circumstances that we're in, the data, the information we have at that time. Do we all have things that we're like, if I could turn back the clock and do X, Y, Z? Of course, because we all have different data now. But at the time, you make the decision based on that moment in time. You can't beat yourself up. You can't. It is what it is, and as I tell my kids, an experience that you don't learn from, that is a wasted experience. But it's not wasted if you learn something. That's my Hallmark card for a moment for the day. Let's see. Let's see what you guys got going on. What's going on? Let's see. Leslie says, please remember you can only deduct in mortgage interest if you itemize. That is true, but you know what? I'm not a tax preparer. Truthfully, I pay someone to do that for me. Why? Because I'm not a CPA. But I will tell you, I've always deducted my mortgage interest. Always. Matter of fact, back in the day, I had a formula that I would teach my buyers on to estimate what I'm not even sure where I did with that spreadsheet, but I had a spreadsheet that I would share with my buyers so they could calculate what their estimated, savings was. And we're not talking a credit here, guys. We're talking about money that's added onto your tax return in April. You have to have a full calendar year, of course, but it's real money. It is real money. Let's see. Dun, 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 dun. Hey, retirement underrated. If you guys want to check out his YouTube channel, check out Retirement Underrated YouTube channel. If you're retired, it's a great, check it out. Let's support each other. Cindy says, if mortgage interest is deductible, odd question is no such thing. What if someone is in a reverse mortgage? Ooh, that gets a more complicated situation. And they are paying back what is borrowed. I do not know. I don't have an answer for you on that. Reverse mortgages are a very, very different animal. For those that may not know, a reverse mortgage basically means that you're taking out, you're living on your equity of that property now. It's different than a home equity loan, and you have to be a certain age, you got to meet all the criteria and all the things. And the whole idea of it is that it's, if you're cash strapped, and it gives you the ability to enjoy or use the money that's in your home to help you live. And then when you leave this world, your family will will sell the house, pay off the mortgage. Done. I will say you've got to be very careful. That the reverse mortgage field, a ton of predatory lenders, tons. There was a lot of seniors that are destitute that were taken advantage of with that. But I don't know how the mortgage interest works with a reverse mortgage, Cindy. So I don't have an answer for you. Not an odd question at all, though, because that is something that I'm going to look into. Because I'm curious. Let's see. Teresa, looking to list mid-December. Flakes of snow in West Virginia means house will sit. Not necessarily. How much below market can I price to have it sell quick? What I strongly recommend, if possible, you want to look at comparable solds, not active listings, not pending listings, only sold listings within the last 30 days. And then you want to, it depends on where you're at. If you're talking a $250,000 house versus a $500,000 house or $700,000 house, it's going to be, obviously it's going to be a little different, but it really, I'm not going to give you a percentage or a dollar amount because that is where experiential knowledge and knowing the market and knowing the buyer activity, what buyers will react to in that market, that's where the agent that is actually doing business in that market, they're going to be able to give you that feedback. Knowing, what your list price to sell price ratio is right now, knowing how many days on market, all those things, you have to take into consideration. However, you definitely want this is why every house will sell in any market. You want to undercut that. You want to look at that and say, if my neighbor's house sold. Now, keep in mind, some more food for thought. Real estate's a complicated thing. Everybody says, "Oh, it's just easy. Make an offer and be, I don't need a real estate agent." Blah 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 blah. Well, if it's a bad real estate agent, you probably don't want to hire them and probably sell it yourself. But it's complicated. Why is it complicated? Well, here's food for thought. You're heading into the winter season. House sells this week. When did it go under contract? 45, 60 days ago. 60 days ago, that house was under contract for the value of what it was 60 days ago. Not the value that it closes, not the date that it closes. So the sold comp is not, what are we, November 11th. Happy Veterans Day, by the way. I completely forgot to say that at the beginning of this live stream. Oh my goodness. Happy Veterans. Thank you for all the veterans watching. Thank you for your service. But it's not the value for November 11th. It was actually the value from 2 months ago. 2 months ago. So consider that, number one. But number two, you want to look at something that is as recent as possible and then make those small adjustments based on what you're seeing in the market. And you might have to fine tune it. I don't like doing it, but if in a situation that like this, you may say, okay, well, this, because you don't want to leave any money. I don't like leaving any money on the table. I'm very cautious. I'm conservative when it comes to pricing. I don't like to leave any of my clients' money on the table at all, ever. Treat it like my own. And so I don't gamble. I don't take chances. So I'll try to cut it as close as I can to the line. And then sometimes, though, in a market that's starting to slide, you may need to make some small changes slowly, but do it very early. Don't wait. And that would be the thing that I would tell you is if you're going to do something like that, do it early on, shortly after you put it on the market. Food for thought. Blue Jay says, what is buying down a rate? Doesn't their lender have to agree to this? That's a great question. Rate buy downs are, every lender should and does offer a rate buy down. All it is literally exactly what it sounds like. The amount they charge you might be different, but a rate buy down, and a rate buy down, how they frame it, how they offer it to you will also be different. You have a buy down, say, would be, you're buying a half a point and the cost is 1% of the loan or something. 1% of the, a $400,000 mortgage, $4,000 to buy it down half a percentage. This is where a skilled lender will be able to say, okay, you're going to be saving X amount of dollars for that half a percentage over the course of, this is how long it's going to take to equal the recapture. If it cost you $4,000, right? That's unlikely to be $4,000. So $2,500. If it costs you $2,500 and your savings is $250 a month, how many months before that $2,500 is canceled out? And if you get into a point where the recapture is like 10 years, it may not even be worth it. But some will do buy downs for the full length of the loan. Some will do what's called a 3-2-1 buy down or a 2-1 buy down. What that means is it'll buy down the rate 2 points for the first year, and then the rate goes up by 1 point and it might be 1 point below whatever the prime rate is for the next year. And then the 30-year, and then years, 3 through 30 are locked in at whatever that third reset is. There's all different types of conditions and programs and how it's broken down. But the bottom line is you are paying a percentage, or someone is paying a percentage of the loan in exchange for a lower rate. And that's where you really need to read the fine print, because you don't want to get into a 3-2-1 buy down and have that 30-year rate that has now adjusted after a couple of years. And that 30-year rate is now based on, prime plus 0.5%. And now prime is up to 7%. You got to be careful. You got to be really, really careful. But it is attractive, because you could get in a situation like this where we have a 6.25%. Where are we at for the 30-year fixed rate mortgage today? Where are we at, guys? As of yesterday, 6.34%. You can see where the Fed, was it the 28th? Well, it was leading up to, which is interesting, leading up to the Fed meeting, the 28th, and then now it's at 6.34, adjusted up. Last week it was 6.29, but you can get a rate for 5.29. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. All right. I love it when you're very welcome, Michael. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate all you guys asking all these questions. It is, I love having a conversation. Let's see. This case says, I think we're in a recession. It might last a while. In general, it's currently a good time to buy. Once the recession is over and confidence return, the opportunity will have passed. True. Again, it's all in the information that you have available and your circumstances that you're in now. Oh, you're very welcome, Miss H. I appreciate that. It's not about me, it's about you guys, but thank you. Let's see. Can you comment on the AI bubble in the housing market, when or if the bubble burst? Oof. That's a can of worms. You know what? I can tell you that the AI bubble is not directly linked to a lot of the layoffs, but it is indirectly linked to a lot of the layoffs that's happening, because there's a lot of redundancy in tasks, and the layoffs that are happening in all these big corporations. A lot of it is upper management and, duplication of tasks. And it's just not necessary if you have computer programs. And I'll be honest, I don't have an assistant. I don't have an administrative assistant. I don't have a transaction coordinator. I am type AAA. I built my own, self-taught, my contact management software, built it myself. Systems, I put my systems together. I'm a systems nut. I like not automation for the sake of automation, but if I can find a way for AI to make something easier, faster for me, that doesn't need my hands on it, then I'll do it. Now, if you've ever requested a referral from me, the initial form is automated. The follow-up, where I send you a questionnaire, is not automated. I do that manually every single time. Why? Because I want to read your comments and respond to your comments or questions as I'm sending the form. Those are the things I don't automate, but a lot of those other things I do. And so I can run my business the way I want to run it with a little help of AI, and without having to hire. Now, I think that's happening. I don't know a lot about the AI bubble, the potential. I haven't seen the data for if an AI bubble is going to burst. I think that what will happen is that there is going to be a seismic shift in what jobs are available. You may have this job that has always been done in person, and now you have AI taking over. Here's the thing. Someone still has to program AI. You still need a human to tell it what to do, service it when it breaks. And I'm telling you, listen, I use automations and whatnot. sometimes there are breaks. Drives me crazy. When all of a sudden I'm like, I got to stop everything and fix this thing because it's right in the middle of my business day. But that's what happens. You got to serve. So what does that mean? That means that this person here that was doing this job for maybe 25 years, now the companies are going to retrain. They don't lose their jobs. It's a different job. If you are not, if people don't embrace that and say, okay, I will learn how to do this thing, then, if they don't, they're like, I lost my job and I'm not doing anything about it, then it's going to be trouble. But if you embrace the opportunity as it changes, because I think that is what's going to happen. I don't, yes, there's fat in corporations, there's fat in the government and all the things, but as we've seen, you can't just cut and not replace with anything. You can trim, but if I took a prime piece of steak and went after it with a hatchet and trimmed it and all the things, and I have a piece of steak going from here to here, how happy would I be? Not so happy. But if you take the time and only trim where you need and all the things, and just marinate it for a long time, now you've got a good meal. But anyways, I digress. Those are my thoughts, Cypress. Norton 5775 says, would you consider an 80% agent, one who let her sellers leave tons of furniture and a mess in the house, refuse to move? Yeah. I heard something yesterday. I always listen to other agents and their videos and live streams and all the things, just because I am endlessly curious. I love learning about stuff, and I want to try to be open to different points of view, and I want to know what other people are saying, all the things. And she said something that honestly made my toes curl. I don't know. It aggravated me, to be honest. And what she said was that, the something to the extent of like the buyer's agent, she was the listing agent and the buyers came to the table and there was problems, and it was the buyer's agent fault because the buyer's agent wasn't controlling the buyer. Or the seller has furniture and the seller's agent wasn't controlling the seller. That's the biggest bunch of BS I've ever heard in my life. It is not an agent's prerogative. It should not be our directive. It is not our place to control anything. If there's any reason why I'm doing this content, is so that I want to put that control squarely in your hands. Advocate for yourself. Our job is to educate, advise. Educate, advise, make sure you know the options are, prepare. Okay? This particular situation, that is an 80% agent that did not educate the seller. An 80% agent that doesn't stay in communication with the seller, that doesn't have open lines of communication to understand where all that stuff is, going and all the things. Yes, that is an 80% agent. Now, that being said, I will tell you that everybody, we're all humans. I've made mistakes. A lot of it, sometimes it happens. And sometimes sellers lie to us. It is what it is. And they say, oh, we'll be out. And then the final walkthrough comes and they're not out. And it wasn't from the lack of trying to get information, the lack of education, the lack of constantly reminding them that this is when the closing is, this is the expectation, this is when you need to be out. It was them making the decision to stick their head in the sand, or just not share that information, or not care about the buyers. I don't have control over that. I don't. However, if the seller's agent, if the listing agent's paying attention, okay, my spidey sense goes off with people like that, because I typically, part of the initial interview, usually I can sense that very early on, and then I say, I'm not the agent for you, and excuse myself and Release them back into the ocean. Let somebody else, another agent work with them. But yeah, that's an 80% agent, Norton, for sure. And the sellers, that's the listing agents, they need to be the coordinator, not the controller, but the coordinator of a transaction. Man, you know what? Super, super sorry. I'm sorry. And that stinks, man. That stinks. Not fair. But what did you learn? That's what I was saying. Like, what did we learn? Let's say spoonge. How do I deal with small town real estate agents? Everyone seems to be related to or friends with all the other sellers. Town is around 12,000 people. Okay. Thank you for asking this question. Thank you. And I feel like I've actually had to communicate this to a few folks lately that have requested referrals. Yes, it is super important to, I think it's whenever possible, working with an agent that is in the vicinity of where you live is potentially advantageous. Potentially. Presumably, that's where they're selling, they're doing their transactions, they're going to know the market, yada, yada, yada. However, if you do not have a 20% agent in your area, the only time I would say to venture out would be for the reason that you're mentioning. The fact of the matter is, I talk to these agents across the country, and in terms of the area that they cover, some areas there's just slim pickings with agents, or there's exactly what you're talking about. Everybody knows everybody. And if you don't want to be in that type of situation, then you go outside the neighborhood. You got to look at what's more important is you got to look at their transaction history. You might have an agent, there might be a 20% agent that is 2 or 3 towns over, but has done business in that town. Because at the end of the day, it's all about their knowledge, their reference. Did they grow up there? They may have their office in another town, but maybe they grew up there. Maybe they know the area. They've had several clients in that area. They know the important things about the neighborhood that you want to sell in. Those are the things that I would be on the lookout for. But look at their transaction history and then go outside the town in a situation like that. I hope that helps. For sure. All right, guys. I was gonna scroll through here, and I gotta was this half-hour time start delay is I'm like, holy cow, I'm hungry. No wonder. 8:30 my time. Woohoo! Thank you for saying that, Teresa. Stellar commentary got it. Thank you. Agent says market is dead. My home is top 5% price in impoverished area. Buyer dependent on what doctors move here. Ready to rock and roll. No choice. Get it sold. You know what? When an agent says the market is dead, that's a huge red flag. Huge. I mean, yes, there are markets that are suffering. There are markets that are slowing. But let me tell you something. In Florida, okay, one of the hardest areas, states in the country, I have not one, two clients that reached out to me through my channel, just sold their house, and they're moving to Florida to buy. They're not alone. People are buying in Florida. People buy everywhere. So if you have a situation like that, there's no such thing as a dead market. There's always a reason. It's a matter of reaching the people that want to live there. There's always somebody that wants to. U.S. is a big place. Huge. Billions of people. You can't tell me you can't find a buyer. Agent says the market is dead. To me, and I don't know the agent, and I don't know the market, and I don't know the details, but to me, that screams the agent doesn't know what the heck they're doing. They don't know the market. They don't know the market, and they don't know what else to tell you. So instead of taking responsibility for the advice that they're giving you, it's easier to just blame it on the market. Just blame it on the market. Because now the blame's not on me. I don't have to take responsibility. That's what drives me crazy about the real estate community. and why I constantly follow up with if you've worked with one of my referral agents, I will diligently try to follow up because I want to make sure my referral agents are not falling into those traps. Let's see. Oh, Cindy Edwards says, Jen, is it possible to give Teresa Panic Ives my email? I know 2 people who want to move to the Harpers Ferry area in West Virginia. Here's what I want you guys to do. info@jensylvester.com. info@jensylvester.com. Cindy, because my brain won't necessarily remember, but send me an email with this information. And then, Teresa, send me an email with your information. I am more than happy to connect you guys. Make it happen. 100%. info@jensylvester.com. Send me the email for that kind of situation. I am more than happy to connect you guys. And if it means helping each other out, oh man. I just got a dopamine hit. That's fantastic. I love it. Love it. Jay Schwartz. Know who you are. QQQ, my house just listed this past Saturday. Woo! How do you know how quickly the price would need to be reduced? Data, my friend. Know what the median days to offer is and know what your list to sell price ratio is. Those 2 pieces of data you want to know. You want to know how long it's going to take. If your days to offer, and median, not average, whenever possible. If the median is 30 days, then if it's been a week, 2 weeks, just to manage our expectations. Manage your expectations because you're reacting too quickly. I do think it's a good idea to have a plan in place with your agent, though. Just a what if emergency, an emergency break glass kind of plan. If you get to that 30-day mark of when the average or what the median days to offer is, you're starting to approach that and you haven't had showings, you haven't had activity, you haven't had interest, and your agent will be able to follow that and see what kind of interest on the websites and all the things to see if you're getting traction. Knowing those numbers will help. So I hope that helps. And my fingers are crossed for you. Yeah, it is late night for sure. I'm thinking BLT and sweet potato fries is what I'm going to make as soon as I sign off. Oh man, thank you so much. What do we got here?
Super chat.
You are the best, Cindy. Thank you so much. $10 super chat from Cindy Atwood. Thank you, Paul T and Jen. This is interesting and so helpful education. Thank you. I appreciate it. 100%. Oh my goodness. Guys, I'm going to, the poll. Good grief. 154 votes. Real quick. The poll, 154, that's fantastic, guys. Love it. Will the proposed 50-year mortgage keep the housing market from going into a housing recession? Okay, yes. Definitely help home affordability, 8%. Maybe. Could help some buyers, 18%. Undecided, need more information, 23%. And here it is, guys. You guys are you're speaking, you're representing. No, it will not improve the market. 52%. 52% of you said no, it's not going to help the market, and I think we're all on the same page. I think we're all on the same page, guys. Thank you so much for being patient with the time change here, adjustment with an appointment here, starting a little later. I appreciate all the conversation in the chat, all your questions. It's my favorite night of the week, Tuesday nights. I really do love getting on the live stream, talking to you guys. And I know that you guys, there's a lot of real estate YouTubers out there, and they're doing live streams, and you carved time out of your busy day to spend it with me, and that is not lost on me, and I thank you for that. Guys, have a great week. I'll be back regular time next week, Tuesday, 6 p.m. Barring any unforeseen circumstances. I don't think that's going to happen. Too early for snowstorms here. So next week, 6 p.m. Eastern time, same bat channel. But in the meantime, guys, be kind. Try to be patient. We're heading into the holidays. Emotions are going to run high. All the things. You know what? People that are struggling out there, it causes your emotions to go even higher. And then, as I always say, before you judge, seek to understand. Try to judge. And I actually was going to play a video, and I didn't grab it. I didn't think of it until it was too late. And it was a quick video I saw on Instagram the other night, and it was all about that. You know, you see somebody speeding, and then you find out that the guy's, wife just died, and he's on his way to tell his kids his wife just died. And the guy honking the horn behind him was mad because he was not driving properly, not driving fast enough. If he had had a little patience and tried to get information before passing judgment, he probably would have realized that, you know what, driving a little slower is not a big deal when you have somebody grieving. And those type of examples those happen every day. Everybody's going through stuff. Everybody. Try to be better. Try to be kind. Try to be understanding. Guys, go out in the world and make your mark. Have a great week. Great weekend. See you next Tuesday, 6 p.m. Ciao.